lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
Behind palace walls, a single decision has sent serious shockwaves through modern royal history. What started as quiet chatter about finances has now hardened into a high-stakes reality for Prince Harry, one that insiders say no one saw coming this fast. According to multiple royal commentators, recent developments connected to Meghan Markle reportedly prompted renewed legal scrutiny around long-standing inheritance arrangements. This, in turn, required Prince William to step forward and authorize a move that many observers are calling unprecedented. Some have even noted that Princess Diana herself once spoke about protecting her legacy with extreme care, raising the question, was this destiny unfolding or a safeguard finally being enforced? Reports now suggest that Prince Harry's inheritance tied to Princess Diana has been temporarily frozen under the terms of a pre-existing legal framework. Importantly, palace sources emphasize this was not a reaction to tabloid pressure, online speculation, or personal disputes. Instead, it is being described as a procedural decision rooted in law, tradition, and the strict preservation of Diana's wishes. In the early hours of January 17, 2026, senior officials at Clarence House allegedly approved the immediate suspension of certain trust distributions connected to the Duke of Sussex. What makes this moment stand out is the activation of a clause that had reportedly remained unused for decades. Royal analysts say this clause was designed specifically to pause distributions if eligibility questions ever required formal clarification. Palace-linked commentators stress that this step was not taken casually. They claim it followed new information that raised unresolved legal questions related to beneficiary qualifications under the original trust terms. In plain terms, the move is being framed as a legal pause, not a judgment, and not a conclusion. A formal notice issued under Prince William's authority reportedly left little room for confusion. The language described the action as a protective measure meant to secure the estate until all questions are properly addressed. While no individual was accused of wrongdoing, the ripple effects are massive and the symbolism is impossible to ignore. Royal observers point out that the clause itself is strict and unemotional. It does not weigh public opinion, reputation, or media narratives. Its sole function is to maintain legal clarity and preserve the integrity of Princess Diana's estate until matters are formally resolved. This temporary freeze marks a rare moment of visible authority within the monarchy. It highlights how tradition, legal foresight, and institutional responsibility can collide without warning. The trust is secured, the process is underway, and the unanswered questions now hang heavier than ever. So how will the Duke respond? And what truths could still rise from the past? Royal watchers are now asking whether Prince Harry's frozen inheritance is really about family distance, or something far more procedural. Some online commentators have questioned whether the palace is retaliating for his departure, but palace-linked sources strongly deny that framing. Instead, analysts point to a rarely discussed legal safeguard tied directly to Princess Diana's estate. According to archival experts, the temporary halt traces back to an obscure provision known as Clause 3, buried deep within Diana's private trust. This clause was never designed to control behavior, manage reputation, or punish controversy. Its purpose is far more technical: legal clarity. Clause 3 exists solely to pause access to the trust if formal verification is ever required under specific circumstances outlined decades ago. For years, it remained dormant, viewed by palace attorneys as a last resort contingency rather than an active mechanism. Its sudden activation marks a serious turning point. By allowing Clause 3 to be enforced, Prince William has acknowledged that Diana's long-dismissed concerns were not symbolic or emotional, but carefully documented legal foresight. Royal archivists now confirm that Princess Diana personally insisted on its inclusion during the mid-1990s. At that time, Diana was under immense pressure, and sources say her trust in royal systems had weakened. Yet her instincts as a mother sharpened. She reportedly feared that her younger son, Prince Harry, could one day face confusion created not by malice, but by silence, delays, and unresolved legal questions. According to historians, Diana believed that unanswered issues, if left dormant long enough, could evolve into obstacles later, even without ill intent. Clause 3 was therefore framed as maternal foresight rather than suspicion. It was logged quietly, rarely discussed, and never expected to surface. No one anticipated a future where formal verification would be required to unlock what had always been considered a birthright. Yet that future has now arrived. By triggering the clause, William has effectively transformed his mother's private precaution into enforceable legal structure. Crucially, the trust itself makes no accusations and draws no conclusions. It does not speculate or imply wrongdoing. It simply pauses. Until formal clarity exists, access remains suspended, untouched, secure, and immovable. This freeze is not a punishment. It is a procedural standstill, a legal pause designed to protect the estate until all requirements are satisfied. But its implications are massive, sending a public signal that questions once avoided can no longer be deferred. William has chosen certainty over sentiment, structure over silence. He has allowed Diana's quiet safeguard to operate exactly as she intended. And until the process reaches its conclusion, the inheritance remains locked, not by suspicion, but by a clause written decades ago by a mother determined that truth, whenever it arrived, would finally matter. So how will the Duke respond, and what unresolved truths might still surface from the past? Royal commentators are now debating why Prince Harry's inheritance access was paused, and whether this move reflects distance from the family or something far more procedural. Some online voices initially framed the freeze as retaliation for Harry stepping away from royal duties, but palace-aligned analysts push back on that idea. They argue the decision is not emotional, personal, or punitive, but rooted in long-standing legal structure tied directly to Princess Diana's estate. According to archival experts, the sudden halt traces back to an obscure safeguard known as Clause 3, hidden deep within Diana's sealed trust. This clause was never intended to manage behavior, control image, or respond to controversy in the public eye. Instead, it focuses on something far more technical: legal certainty. Clause 3 exists for one purpose alone: to pause trust distributions if specific verification requirements outlined decades ago are ever triggered. For years, palace lawyers reportedly viewed it as an extreme contingency rather than an active mechanism. Its activation now marks a major turning point. By allowing Clause 3 to be enforced, Prince William has effectively acknowledged that Diana's concerns were not symbolic fears or emotional instincts, but carefully drafted legal precautions designed for rare circumstances. Royal archivists have since confirmed that Princess Diana personally requested the clause's inclusion during the mid-1990s, a period marked by intense pressure and declining trust in royal institutions. Yet her instincts as a mother, sources say, only sharpened during that time. At the heart of Diana's concern was not betrayal or cruelty, but confusion. She reportedly feared that her younger son, Prince Harry, could one day face uncertainty caused by silence, delayed clarification, or unresolved legal questions surrounding his future. Historians suggest Diana believed that unanswered matters, if left untouched long enough, could grow heavier over time, not because of intent, but because of avoidance. Clause 3 was therefore categorized as maternal foresight rather than suspicion or accusation. Under extraordinary circumstances, no one expected the clause to ever be used. No one imagined a future where formal verification would be required to unlock what had always been viewed as a secure inheritance. Yet that future has now arrived. By triggering the clause, William has transformed his mother's private safeguard into enforceable legal structure. The trust itself makes no accusations and draws no conclusions. It simply pauses and demands confirmation before proceeding. The freeze is not a punishment. It is a procedural standstill, a legal breath held until clarity is achieved. Still, its implications are enormous, signaling that questions once quietly deferred can no longer remain unresolved. William has chosen certainty over sentiment and structure over silence. He has allowed Diana's precaution to operate exactly as she intended. And until the process reaches resolution, the inheritance remains locked, guarded not by suspicion, but by a clause written decades ago, by a mother determined that truth, whenever it arrived, would matter. It is a reminder that even in royal life, time does not erase unanswered questions. Legacies are not only passed down through wealth, but through the courage to confront what history leaves unresolved. And it was the unveiling of this clause that made the inheritance freeze possible. So why would the royal family activate a clause this powerful? And how is Diana's decision viewed through the lens of English law? To understand that, we have to look at the extraordinary legal freedom Princess Diana possessed when shaping her legacy. Under English law, Diana held a level of authority that surprises many observers. This power, known as testamentary freedom, gave her full legal control over how her estate would be distributed, to whom, under what conditions, and on what timeline. This meant Diana could set requirements, impose delays, or even exclude beneficiaries entirely if she believed it served a greater purpose. In England and Wales, the law places very few restrictions on such decisions, allowing a will to reflect the clear intent of its creator rather than forcing automatic outcomes. That freedom stands in sharp contrast to inheritance laws elsewhere in the United Kingdom. In Scotland, for example, close relatives are legally entitled to fixed portions of an estate, regardless of personal wishes. England and Wales offer no such guarantees, giving individuals far greater control over their final arrangements. For Diana, this meant her estate was never just about money. It was a structured tool, one she could design carefully to protect her intentions long after she was gone. Because of this legal reality, Diana was fully entitled to embed safeguards within her trust, and the law supported her right to do so. These provisions were not emotional gestures or symbolic warnings. They were lawful mechanisms written with deliberation and foresight. She could require verification, pause distributions, or delay access if specific conditions were not met, and the law allowed her to plan for uncertainty without apology. This is where Clause 3 emerged. It did not exist on the fringe of legality, nor did it challenge the legal framework. It was carefully drafted, valid in every respect, and firmly rooted in Diana's legal authority. While the clause may appear unusual to some, it was neither radical nor improper. Many trusts include conditions that delay inheritance until beneficiaries reach certain ages, meet requirements, or complete defined checks. Diana's clause simply focused on certainty, a concern the law clearly permits. What makes Clause 3 stand out is not its legality, but its intention. Diana understood that wealth can complicate lives as easily as it can secure them. She believed inheritance should follow clarity, not assumption. The clause was designed to slow the process, not to accuse or condemn. It created space for confirmation before access, ensuring that what was passed on rested on solid ground. Far from being imposed by advisors or palace lawyers, Clause 3 was entirely Diana's decision. She exercised her legal freedom with precision, not recklessness. Every condition was placed deliberately, every word chosen to protect rather than provoke. In that sense, Clause 3 was not extraordinary at all. It was the natural result of a woman using the full scope of her legal rights thoughtfully. English law gave Diana the power to shape her legacy, and she used that power with intention, foresight, and resolve. But law alone may not tell the whole story. So what else reinforced this action? What additional factor finally compelled the Crown to act? According to royal historians, the turning point was not gossip or public pressure, but a handwritten document from the past. A letter in Diana's own hand, long overlooked, now impossible to ignore. It was a deeply personal letter, written in the summer of 1996 and kept quietly for decades by Paul Burrell. During a routine but unusually thorough review of royal inheritance materials, the letter resurfaced, and its reappearance changed everything. Diana did not write as a princess. In those pages, Princess Diana wrote as a mother who sensed uncertainty ahead. The tone was calm but uneasy, shaped more by intuition than evidence. She spoke about protecting her sons, not from enemies or public scandal, but from confusion, secrecy, and truths left unspoken for too long. She warned that charm could sometimes hide uncertainty, and that silence, if prolonged, could one day cause more damage than dishonesty. In the letter, Diana described a brief encounter during her humanitarian travels, a meeting that lingered in her thoughts. She referenced a blind Tibetan mystic who spoke in symbolic terms about futures shaped by division, legacies weakened from within, and truths delayed until harm had already taken root. The message was not dramatic or theatrical. It was delivered gently, almost kindly, which made it harder to dismiss. Diana admitted she did not fully understand its meaning at the time, yet she felt compelled to record it, a detail that later proved critical. At the end of the letter, she included a short verse written in her own careful hand. For years, that passage was viewed as reflective poetry, symbolic writing Diana often used to process fear, hope, and uncertainty. No one believed it was meant to guide legal decisions or policy. That assumption shifted when legal historians revisited the letter. They noted that the verse closely mirrored the symbolic language later embedded in Clause 3 of Diana's trust. What once sounded poetic now reads as structural guidance, emphasizing delay, verification, and the belief that truth sometimes needs protection until the right moment. The letter revealed that Diana was not predicting events. She was preparing for uncertainty. She understood that the most complex challenges often arrive quietly, wrapped in grace rather than confrontation. With the letter now authenticated and acknowledged, the Crown could no longer treat Clause 3 as merely symbolic. Diana had anticipated a future where truth might not surface naturally. She believed it could remain dormant until someone brave enough forced it into the open. That moment, royal analysts say, has now arrived, transforming a private letter into a quiet force reshaping duty, legacy, and the meaning of inheritance itself. But beyond Clause 3, new questions emerged. What made the clause applicable now? According to legal commentators, the trigger was not rumor or media pressure, but a formal claim submitted through proper legal channels. At the center of that claim stood someone no one expected. She was not a royal, not a court advisor, and not a media figure. She was described in legal filings as a 29-year-old American woman, identified only by initials. She did not arrive with spectacle or accusation. Reports describe her approach as measured, careful, and procedural. In a fictionalized legal account, she asserted a personal claim of biological connection, a claim that carried serious legal implications without asserting proven fact. Importantly, no conclusions were drawn, no determinations were made. But the filing itself was enough to activate dormant safeguards, awakening a clause written decades earlier and placing the inheritance into formal suspension. And just like that, a quiet legal motion, not scandal, not outrage, shifted the entire landscape. Her stated birth date, July 1996, immediately placed her story at a precise moment in time, a period of transition, caught between chapters, when one life phase was closing and another was beginning. The timing alone drew attention, but what made her presence impossible to dismiss was not theatrics. It was detail. In this fictionalized account, the woman identified only by initials arrived with sworn statements, notarized records, and a carefully assembled paper trail. Everything was prepared with almost clinical precision, suggesting intent to withstand scrutiny rather than provoke headlines. She presented DNA test results reviewed by an internationally respected genetic specialist within the narrative framework. According to the account, the findings indicated a high statistical likelihood of a maternal connection to the Markle family line. Crucially, this information was introduced as part of the story, not as a verified public fact. What stood out most was what she did not ask for. She made no financial demands, sought no titles, privileges, or public recognition. There was no request for inheritance access or public apology. Her stated purpose was narrow and personal, acknowledgement of truth and access to accurate medical history. That restraint altered how the claim was received within the story. Officials could not easily dismiss her as opportunistic or reckless. Her tone was measured, her language careful, and her focus remained on certainty rather than identity. She spoke less about who she was and more about the importance of knowing where one comes from, especially when it comes to health records, family history, and honesty. The timing of her appearance proved decisive. Her emergence coincided with renewed legal reviews connected to long-dormant safeguards within royal trusts. The moment she stepped forward, the situation crossed an invisible threshold. Hypothetical questions became procedural realities, and silence became impossible. Clause 3, long viewed as a theoretical safeguard, could no longer remain inactive. Its purpose was never to accuse or assign blame, but to pause and verify when formal questions arose. Within this narrative, the claim itself, regardless of outcome, was enough to activate that mechanism. The crisis was not driven by scandal or spectacle, it was triggered by precision. One individual armed with documentation rather than demands forced an institution built on tradition to confront uncertainty. Whether the claim would ultimately be validated or dismissed became secondary in that moment. What mattered was that truth, whatever form it might take, had been formally introduced into the process. Once that door opened, there was no returning to ignorance, but questions remained. Would further verification follow, or was the response purely emotional? Could past details shed light on why this claim surfaced now? That inquiry led investigators, in this imagined reconstruction, to re-examine fragments of an old timeline. What emerged was not a single dramatic revelation, but a sequence of quiet details that, when aligned, raised procedural questions. At the center of this fictional investigation was a past relationship said to have occurred long before any public royal connection. Within the narrative, records pointed to a reported engagement during the mid-1990s involving Meghan Markle and an individual identified in documents as Joe Giuliano. These references were treated not as conclusions, but as historical claims requiring verification. Investigators focused less on romance and more on documentation. The most sensitive element involved mention of a sealed annulment request submitted to religious authorities, a detail that, if accurate within the story, carried procedural relevance rather than public judgment. Embedded references within those records alluded to unresolved family information. Previously dismissed as rumor or misinterpretation, these documents were re-examined strictly within a legal and historical framework. Once again, no conclusions were drawn, no accusations were made. But the existence of such records, fictionalized for narrative purposes, reinforced why dormant safeguards had been designed to pause, verify, and proceed only with clarity. And with that, the timeline began to unravel, not through noise or outrage, but through paperwork, patience, and the slow collision of past and present. Within this fictional account, archivists began reviewing historical records, not for scandal, but for accuracy. Religious institutions are known for meticulous documentation, and even sealed annulments leave structured trails if formally recorded. If verified, such records would suggest that elements of personal history had remained undisclosed for decades. The issue was never morality or private life choices. It was process. Royal systems depend on full disclosure during vetting, immigration filings, and marriage preparations. Omissions matter just as much as inaccuracies because decisions are made based on completeness. Past marriages, children, or binding religious commitments are not judged emotionally within these systems. They are evaluated procedurally. Even without malicious intent, failing to disclose relevant history is treated as a procedural breach, not a personal failing. That distinction became central to the inquiry. Investigators were not searching for guilt, but for clarity. Within royal legal frameworks, silence can carry the same consequences as misstatement. The system assumes all relevant history is placed on the table so decisions can be made with full awareness. Anything less introduces uncertainty into institutions built on continuity and legitimacy. And in this narrative, the implications expanded quickly. Questions moved beyond the past and into the present, touching the foundations of lineage, titles, and inheritance. The Sussex line, once viewed as settled, suddenly appeared subject to procedural review. What unsettled officials most was not what might be proven, but what had never been examined before. The chronology suggested gaps rather than deception, and gaps, once noticed, demand resolution. Importantly, the response was not accusatory. It paused. It acknowledged that even long-buried history can resurface when systems designed for certainty encounter unanswered questions. And once those questions are formally raised, tradition offers no shield against the need for answers. Within this fictional framework, emerging details appeared aligned with the claim that activated Clause 3, making the safeguards enforcement seem procedurally justified rather than reactive. But what consequences could this bring, and how would the system respond next? According to palace-focused commentators, the monarchy entered what insiders privately described as legacy lockdown, a phase focused on containment, continuity, and safeguarding succession. Every move was deliberate, measured, and coordinated. Prince William reportedly authorized the suspension of internal references, projects, and financial ties connected to the Sussex branch. Not as punishment, but as institutional distancing. Princess Anne was said to have paused charitable engagements that previously involved the couple, ensuring no formal or informal overlap remained active. The goal was clarity, not confrontation. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine adopted a posture of deliberate discretion. Her public appearances and silence were interpreted as intentional, signaling stability without escalation. The message was unmistakable. The machinery of the monarchy would continue uninterrupted, with no shortcuts, exceptions, or distractions, especially across the Atlantic. Outside palace walls, the shift unfolded more quietly. In this narrative, Meghan Markle was said to experience a gradual cooling of industry relationships. Hollywood support did not collapse overnight. It thinned. Longtime allies reportedly stepped back with professional caution. Tyler Perry, a known supporter, was described as formally pausing collaborations. Other contacts cited scheduling conflicts, strategic recalibration, or industry prudence. Projects once in development slowed or stalled without explanation, not through public rejection, but through silence, delays, and distance. No announcements, no statements, just absence. And just like that, pressure mounted on two fronts, institutional and cultural, not through scandal or spectacle, but through restraint, process, and the quiet power of systems closing ranks. Media platforms quietly paused releases and shelved initiatives. What had once been framed as resilience and independence now appeared more like isolation. A network of influence slowly thinned as legal strategy took priority over narrative control. Silence, which initially served as a shield against scrutiny, gradually became a liability. Without proactive communication or visible reconciliation, absence left room for speculation and growing uncertainty. In Windsor, the response was defensive but disciplined. Maintain continuity, enforce protocol, and eliminate distraction. In Los Angeles, the impact was subtler but no less real. The absence of allies and active projects created unspoken pressure in an industry driven by visibility and momentum. Doors did not slam. They simply stopped opening. In both worlds, closures were quiet, deliberate, and final. Professional, social, and institutional channels shifted behind the scenes, signaling that pathways once taken for granted no longer functioned as expected. The contrast was striking. Influence without participation fades, and visibility without access has limits. As royal containment and Hollywood restraint converged, an unspoken truth emerged. When structures tighten, connections fray, and silence, no matter how strategic, carries consequences. Within this fictionalized account, references tied to the Sussex brand were paused, charitable links reassessed, and industry partnerships cooled, not through accusation, but through distance and procedural caution. That left one central question hanging in the air. What becomes of Prince Harry now? And would the king step in for his son at this moment of reckoning? By January 18th, the crisis reached both emotional and institutional intensity. Prince Harry departed Montecito without spectacle, entourage, or announcement. He carried little beyond legal papers, correspondence, and, most poignantly, the final will of his mother, Princess Diana. Those documents, preserved for decades, held unresolved threads of legacy, love, and lineage, threads now demanding resolution inside Buckingham Palace. The atmosphere within the palace was heavy. King Charles III, drawing on legal authorities rarely used in modern times, activated dormant provisions designed to pause recognition where claims required verification. These mechanisms had existed for centuries, rarely invoked but unmistakably lawful. Palace officials moved with precision. Archives were consulted, letters authenticated, and protocols followed step by step, not for drama, but for continuity. Amid this controlled process, Paul Burrell stepped forward to deliver one final sealed letter from Diana herself. In her careful, deeply personal words, she anticipated a moment her youngest son would one day face, the pull between love and legacy. What had once read as foresight became reality. Harry's challenge, long foreshadowed in private correspondence, now stood unavoidable at the intersection of family duty, inheritance, and truth. Later that evening, the world watched as King Charles addressed the nation. His words were calm, measured, and free of sensationalism. He spoke not of scandal, but of stewardship, responsibility, and clarity. No inheritance without verification, no restoration without certainty. The message was unmistakable. The speech, though brief, carried centuries of weight, a reminder that monarchy survives not through individual desire, but through law, structure, and restraint. As palace lights dimmed, one quiet truth echoed through the corridors of history. Sometimes, to protect the crown, the hardest choice is restraint, not rescue. This was not judgment, but acknowledgement. The fairy tale of seamless inheritance gave way to reckoning, a careful, deliberate process of verification and decision. Families, legacies, and lines of succession would now be examined under renewed scrutiny. The monarchy's survival depended on clarity, no matter how difficult the path forward became. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next, because this story is far from over.